All right, welcome in to a live Devo tonight. Just giving it a shot. Usually do the pre-recorded video and drop it onto YouTube, but today decided let's give it a shot. Let's try doing it a little live today. So if you hop on in, I'd love to have you drop in the comments where you're watching from. Let me know where you're at, and we're gonna try checking out the book of Jonah, y'all. So uh who's pumped, who's excited, about the book of Jonah? We're not going to try to do the whole thing all in one shot. We're going to try to pace ourselves. We're just going to do one chapter today and just check it out, see what we think. So there we go. We got Jonah live devos, chapter 1, run Jonah run. And so we're just gonna jump right in. It's a Tuesday. Hopefully you've had some tacos today, real tacos, like Taco Bell. No, okay, maybe that wouldn't be the best version of tacos to have, but desperate times call for desperate measures. Here I am today, snowed in basically. So there was no going to get tacos. The only way we could have tacos today is if we happen to have all the fixings here at home. But there are actually no tacos spoken of in the book of Jonah. So without further ado, verse 1 of Jonah, chapter 1. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Get up, go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because their evil has come up before me. That's what the Lord's telling him. Jonah got up to flee to Tarshish from the Lord's presence. He went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish. He paid the fare and went down into it to go with them to Tarshish from the Lord's presence. But the Lord threw a great wind onto the sea, and such a great storm arose on the sea that the ship threatened to break apart. All right, the sailors were afraid, and each cried out to his God, and they threw their ship's cargo into the sea to lighten the load. Meanwhile, Jonah had gone down to the lowest part of the vessel, had stretched out, and fallen into a deep sleep. The captain approached him and said, "What are you doing? Sound asleep. Get up, call to your God. Maybe this God will consider us, and we won't perish." "Come on," the sailors said to each other, "let's cast lots. Then we'll know who is to blame for this trouble we're in." So they cast lots, and the lot singled out Jonah. Can't run from God, you know what I'm saying? And then they said to him, "Tell us who is to blame for this trouble we're in. What is your business, and where are you from? What is your country, and what people are you from?" So it's kind of, they were like trying to be gracious to him. Like, even though the lot fell to you, we'd still like you to explain what's going on. He answered them, "I'm a Hebrew, and I worship the Lord, the God of heavens, who made the sea and the dry land." Then the men were seized by a great fear and said to him, What have you done? What have you done?" The men knew he was fleeing from the Lord's presence because he had told them. So they said to him, "What should we do to you so that the sea will calm down for us?" For the sea was getting worse and worse. He answered them, "Pick me up, throw me into the sea, and then it will calm down for you. For I know that I am to blame for this great storm that is against you." It's like he would rather die. He would rather die than do the will of the Lord. Nevertheless, the men rowed hard to get back to dry land, but they couldn't because the sea was raging against them. So they called out to the Lord, "Please, Lord, don't let us perish because of this man's life, and don't charge us with innocent blood, for you, Lord, have done just as you pleased." Then they picked up Jonah, threw him into the sea, and the sea stopped raging, and the men were seized by great fear of the Lord, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows. The Lord appointed a great fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Whew. What an account. What a story. Goodness gracious. So we go back to kind of that first section of verses. Jonah went from the presence of God. So The book starts out with him in the presence of God, hearing the voice of God, listening to God. Those are all good things, good place to start, but a good place to start doesn't mean that your destination works out well, right? And because his response is to go from the presence of the Lord, to leave the presence of the Lord, and that's a bad choice, And so, and then it uses this language of he went down to Joppa, and then it also uses it again when he went down into the ship, and it's like those are like literary like signals that he's going the wrong way, like he's going the wrong direction, he's making the wrong choices in his life. And so he went down to Joppa because God was calling him up. God always calls us up, even when it's hard, even when it's a challenging thing. And so, I mean, let's talk about what Jonah was doing anyways. He got called to give a word to the people in Nineveh. Who is Nineveh? Nineveh was the capital of the nation of Assyria. They were brutal people. They were violent. They were grotesque. They were just basically kill everybody in their path. And so when the Lord came to Jonah and said, I want you to preach the word to them, he was like, no, don't preach the word to them. Just go annihilate them. They don't deserve a chance. That's really where Jonah was at with these folks. And so he was like, no, I am not going to be your messenger to these people. I'm not going to take a word of hope, a word of judgment, a word of encouragement, because I know you, God, and you're really gracious and kind and merciful. And so if I go in there and I deliver a word to these people from you, you're going to do something nice, and you're not going to punish them the way they deserve to be punished. You're going to show them some mercy. You're going to listen to them, and you're going to be moved by their hearts. And I am not interested in that. So that's kind of Jonah's angle, right? So he goes down to Joppa. But God is so gracious that it actually says he threw a storm into Jonah's path to keep him from rebelling. So as he's running away, going to Tarshish, he's going to Tarshish to run away, not go to Nineveh. Like, Tarshish was literally the furthest point away from Nineveh you could possibly go in his world. It was like if God told you to go to this side of the map, you went to that side of the map, like completely opposite sides of the map. And so, but God's so gracious that he actually threw a storm into Jonah's path to keep him from rebelling and to kind of turn him around. And boy, was Jonah dedicated. He was dedicated to his rebellion. He was like passionate about not obeying God in this particular scenario. But God's so gracious, he actually threw a storm into Jonah's path. And so, you know what? If you feel like you might be going against the will of God in a situation and things get really rough, you might want to pay attention. You might want to listen to the roughness and just check it out. So it's another interesting point that the text brings out is that Jonah was sleeping in the storm, like it's just down in the boat, sleeping away. And you kind of wonder, like, how in the world are you just sleeping in the boat in the midst of a crazy storm? And some commentators have actually wondered if Jonah was suffering from some form of depression that he was in the middle of. And you'd have to say that it's a good bit self-imposed to a large extent, because anytime we go against what God is telling us to do, that's a really good setup for us to be really discouraged, really down, and it just goes the wrong direction for us, mentally, emotionally, even physically a lot of times. So he's sleeping in the storm, and they had to go wake him up in the midst of this storm. And they're just like, what is wrong with you, dude? And and people aren't always gracious, when you're in the midst of a tough time. But sometimes it's just a matter of, exactly what you are supposed to be doing, and you are not doing it. That is not always the reason, but sometimes that is what's going on. And so let's go ahead and jump over. The lot fell to Jonah. God is over even the seemingly random things in life. I mean, nothing gets past God. He is that big. He is that in control that he can control even the fall of the dice, or when they cast lots. He knows exactly how those lots actually tell the truth, that it really was Jonah. Jonah was the cause. And so they look at him and they're like, bro, who are you? Where are you from? And what is this all about? And how did you get us into all this trouble? And so those people were super gracious to him, because even after he told them what to do, they still rowed and threw stuff overboard and rowed some more and tried to avoid at all costs having to send him over the edge. And then finally, the last point I'd like to make is just this redemption of rebellion. And what do I mean by that? Well, the whole story of chapter 1 here is Jonah's rebellion against the voice of God, against the word of God, against the commands, against, like everything that God's about. Jonah is rebelling against it. Even though he's a happy recipient of it, he's going to rebel against it when it applies to people that he doesn't agree with. And that's being that's being overly generous right there. But because the Assyrians, not many of us in this room would want to have given them any kind of grace or mercy or anything, because they were terrible, horrible people. And so it makes sense in a lot of ways that Jonah felt the way he felt, except for the fact that when you have a correct understanding of your heart and how you stand before the Lord, then you realize, oof, I need the ridiculous, amazing grace and mercy of God in my life. So I better be pro the mercy of God in general, right? Because if I rule it out for them, I might be also ruling it out for me. But this redemption of rebellion is in the fact that these guys, after they throw him into the water and the water calms down, the whale, the big fish goes gulp, and gulps up Jonah. So Jonah's in the belly of the great fish now. And those sailors are sitting there going, what in the world just happened here? Like, they are dazed and confused, not really dazed and confused, actually brought to a whole new level of clarity, and they start making vows before the Lord. And so there's a very real possibility that all of these sailors end up walking away serving the God who created heaven and earth, the very God that he spoke of when he said who he represented, even though he was in desperate rebellion against him. And God used it to impact those people's lives. Even when Jonah was like running away from God in the opposite direction, God used his rebellion to bring about the salvation of people that otherwise would have had no contact really with anyone that had a word from the Lord. And that's just how amazing God is. God is so amazing that he gives words to humans to have us be a part of his work. That's the first place he started, when he spoke to Jonah and said, Jonah, I got some stuff I want you to do. And then secondly is when we run the opposite direction and we rebel, he's good enough to throw a storm in our path to slow us down and turn us around and keep us from going the wrong direction. He's a God over the seemingly random parts of life, the casting of the lot, the throwing of the dice, all the things. He's over all of that stuff and has control over those things to be able to guide and direct our lives in the way that he wants us to go. And then he is faithful and powerful enough to redeem even our rebellion, to bring about good, to bring, to work all things together for our good and for his glory. That's what is so amazing. So I hope you are strengthened and encouraged. Let me know what you think about the live version, unedited, just throwing it out there. Jonah chapter 1. God bless you. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.